All right. Hello and welcome to AWS Made Easy Ask Us Anything live stream, episode number 32. Bro, how are you doing?
Doing very well. Finally recovering from the reInvent hangover. And yeah, it's been an exciting week of announcements. We chilled out a little bit this weekend. We had a big, as you know, I come from a fairly large family, and we had a nice cousins get together after a very long time, actually. And it was real fun. Downside, I was down with some laryngitis, so 2 days ago I could barely speak, but thankfully on the recovery, on the mend, really.
Oh,
How
we're
about
glad
you?
to have you with us for the live stream. Well, let's see. My brother just got into town. He lives overseas in Turkey, and so he came over. So we're looking forward to spending more time with him. Trying to get just relocated, so trying to get the studio set up. It's a little bit plain at the moment, but luckily John and Eric from the GTM Delta from their live stream, they're going to give me some advice on how to set up the studio with now that I'm in my new office with a bit more flash to it. So looking forward to implementing that. I think the slightly off-white drywall I can use some room for improvement. Right now it's a blank slate.
I can't wait to steal some of those ideas and incorporate them into my setup as well. So looking forward to that. Anyway, I think we have a pretty exciting show out today. For the viewers, we recorded an interview with Jeff Shillitto. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from ShotStack. And that was a really fun conversation we had with him. But before we kick that off, we have a couple of announcements we'd love to review.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we start with
Why don't we jump right in?
The global free tier. Okay, here comes. All right, well, let's try to parse this one. I'll put it up on the board. Here we go.
So usually while we, if we had something like this, we would, skip the announcements. But there were two of these announcements that stood out a little bit for us. And so we thought we'd definitely review this before we went into our regular interview section. So this one says they announced the global free tier pricing rules for AWS Billing Conductor. For those of you who aren't aware, Billing Conductor basically allows you to do internal charging and chargebacks, and allows you to also spread discounts that you get through EDPs or other mechanisms across all the other organizational units, and just gives you a cleaner mechanism of doing that. This one caught my eye a little bit, because what this one says is when you have a new account that joins your AWS organizations, then this particularly allows you to disable the always free tier, so that you then default into whatever the minimum paid tier is, and therefore the spend and contributions in these accounts are also counted towards your commitments. I thought that this was a little strange in the way this thing operates, because they're basically saying, hey, don't use the free part of your tier that's already available. Instead, bring in a new account, turn off the free part of it, start paying so that you can pay off towards your commitment. It feels very counterintuitive to me.
Ro, have you seen a calculation of exactly how much the free tier is worth if you spent at the value of the next tier? Like if you added up everything you can do minus one, so right, 999,999 Lambda requests or whatever it was, how much would that cost if you turned off the free tier?
I think if you could push the limits, you could actually do a lot within the free tier alone. Take a look at DynamoDB and Lambdas and stuff like that. Like you could run an entire month with, for your entire application and not really run into any of those limits at all. So
I saw a really neat post of someone who abused Lambda to distribute the index of a search engine over using the instant storage for Lambdas.
yeah, I mean, there is of course a case of abuse, but I think there is ton of room, especially when you are in the completely serverless tier or a serverless space. I think there's tons of room to do stuff for literally nothing. And so for me, it feels very counterintuitive that you would turn off the free tier just so that you can meet a certain commitment. I mean, I'm one of those people who's extremely averse to any of these commitments that the EDP kind of enforces on you. So I think with a lot of folks, what generally ends up happening is that you make this commitment, assuming a certain growth rate in your spend. And then your teams are spending all their time and effort trying to figure out how they're going to meet their annual commitment. When in fact, if they spent the same amount of time to figure out how to be more efficient, they could probably operate at half the cost. So, I mean, this whole exercise just feels very confusing and counterintuitive to me.
And so just for our non-enterprise listeners, EDP is the Enterprise Discount Program.
Correct.
Right here.
And typically, I think what happens in an enterprise discount program is that there's some commitment that you make in terms of how much you might want to spend over the next 1, 2, or 3 years, maybe sometimes even 5 years. I'm not sure. And then in return, basically, AWS gives you a certain amount of discount based on what your growth projections are, what your revenue or what your spend is likely to be. But to kind of plan for spending higher feels so counterintuitive to me that I don't quite understand it. Maybe someone who understands this scenario a little better can post, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that. So how do we rate this then? I mean,
this complicates things for me. Like it boggles my mind as to why they would have something like this. But yeah,
you'd think
I don't even want to give it a cloud score because again, it's counterintuitive. This whole announcement is counterintuitive to me.
Yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see on this one. Maybe, again, I think we reserve the right to say there might be someone out there who sees this and says, "Wow, this is great. This makes my life so much easier." And
yeah,
I'm not sure who that is or why they.
But we'd love to hear from you. Please, come on to the show and either post comments, even if you're watching this video later, not in real time. We do review all the comments that come in, so please.
Yeah, add to the comments. Hey, this makes my life much easier, and we'll bring you in for a 5-minute segment. Say, yeah, explain this. We want to learn.
Correct. Okay, so this was the first of the two announcements. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes, absolutely. This one has a long title. AWS Systems Manager Change Manager now displays AWS CloudTrail events associated with change requests. It is funny they have manager in the name of the entity twice.
Yeah, so Change Manager, as we've spoken about many times in the past, Change Manager is basically a service that AWS recommends you use to create any kind of changes in your account. And the mechanism here is that instead of giving admin credentials to any tool or any scripts that you basically want to execute, you create what are called Change Manager templates or Change Manager requests that can either be kind of mirrors of the template. You create these in Change Manager and then execute them centrally. There's an audit trail that comes with each execution of a Change Manager request. And they just made it even better from a governance standpoint because now you can actually link up, or the change manager execution will link to CloudTrails audit trail. So you will know that whatever changes were made by each change manager request's execution, you can map them now to AWS CloudTrail to see exactly what happened and when it happened. And so if, God forbid, you had a wrong template or you did something, incorrectly, you have a trail to understand exactly what happened. And then, therefore, as an outcome, you might have a mechanism to roll back all of these changes. So this definitely is a great simplification. And I would give this a good 4.5 stars.
Okay. Queuing that up. There we go. 4.5. And definitely it simplifies, I would think, because it happens automatically. You don't need to do anything.
Correct.
And
exactly.
All regions where CloudTrail is offered, where Systems Manager is offered.
Correct. The only reason why I took out, half a point was just the way AWS has named Change Manager, which is AWS Systems Manager, Change Manager. Like, it just feels so wrong to name your service something like that. I mean, they had just AWS Change Manager. I mean, I don't know who does the, naming, but this one is just ridiculous.
Yeah, they could have figured out some way of naming it that didn't use the word manager twice. Systems Manager change thing, or I don't know. I guess it's the result of two independent projects that got mashed together. Who knows?
Correct.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, I guess that's all for the live portion of our show today. Now we want to air the interview that we did with Jeff. So the transitions that you saw, the two transitions, and all the transitions we do on the show are generated with ShotStack. And speaking of effectively using the free tier, that was one of the themes of our interview with Jeff. And we're really grateful that he came on the show. It's 3 a.m. in his local time zone at the moment, so didn't work out for a live interview. But we recorded that just a few days ago. So I guess unless we have anything else, we'll play that interview now. I'll be monitoring the chat for any questions, and otherwise that'll conclude the live portion of the show. Raul, do you have anything else?
No, I think let's jump right in. This is a fun conversation, so let's dive right in.
All right, here goes. All right, hello and welcome to an episode of AWS Made Easy, Ask Us Anything live stream. This is episode 32. I'm Stephen Barr, your co-host Raul Subramaniam. Raul, how are you doing?
Doing very, very well. Again, just processing everything that came out of reInvent, and we have so much to cover today.
Yeah,
but first we have a very, very exciting guest.
Yes, I would like to introduce you to our guest, the founder of ShotStack.io, Jeff Shillitto. And ShotStack is one of the tools that we use in our pipeline for making highlights. So without further ado, I want to bring in Jeff. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Hi guys, great to meet you. Thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for getting up early or staying up late or working late to join me or have me on the show. Thanks.
It's our pleasure. An absolute pleasure to have you on the show, Jeff. Your product is really what allows us to make AWS Insiders really cool looking, where we have all these amazing transitions and stuff where we use ShotStack. So thank you for building the product. And and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. It's great to meet people that are, you have found it, discovered it, and using it for real world cases. So it's funny that I'm here on your show.
It's really what I think is really brilliant. Is, every programmer takes this approach of, I wonder how I can do this with FFmpeg. I know that's out there, and you start Googling for how do I do this with FFmpeg, and you've got this awesome FFmpeg documentation, but then what the documentation tells you is this is really hard to get right. So I thought that was a stroke of genius.
Yeah. Those articles do well for us. So yeah.
So Jeff, tell us about yourself. First, where are you? Where are you from? And tell us about yourself and how did you get started?
Okay, yeah. So I'm in Brisbane in Australia, and I've been involved in tech since like the late 90s. Just started off building a website from kind of scratch, just for another business I was working in, which was like physical products. But that website did really well and got lots of interest from around the world. This was back 1999. So I just think, I think maybe virtual digital is the way rather than physical. So I got more and more into that, more kind of design, and then over the years got more and more technical coding, and then I would say only in the last 7 or 8 years I would call myself an engineer. Before that, it was more web designer, web developer, bit of everything. Then I got really into the engineering side. And I've always had this interest for filmmaking and video and just deconstructing how a film's made, or filming things with GoPro, action sports I've always been interested in.
So what kind of action sports are you into? Just as an aside.
So nowadays I surf. So have the camera on the front of the board. You spend like 20 minutes paddling and get 10 seconds of footage. I used to skydive as well. So that was back before GoPro. So the cameras were like size of a brick on your head. So yeah, I've always, and I just love watching those films you get now with people jumping off cliffs with wingsuits and surfing massive waves. So yeah, it's always been a real interest of mine. And so I just wanted to combine those two loves, coding and filmmaking and video, and built ShotStack around that kind of interest.
So what brought about the creation of ShotStack? Like, what was the trigger? Was it a personal need, or was it something just evolved out of interest?
Yeah, there was two things. One was a personal need. One was like, I've record stuff on a GoPro, but I never edit it because I never have the time. And it was like maybe surfing, and it was just, I can't be bothered going through all that footage to find a little snippet and then add some music. So that was how the product started. It was called Sick Edits originally. And I built a front-end interface and I built an API. But I kind of thought, this was several years ago as well. And in Australia, our internet speeds were really slow, and I thought, GoPro footage is really big. No one's going to use this. It's too slow to upload. And also I was trying to use AI, and AI wasn't good enough then either. I still don't know whether it's good enough to extract that stuff now. So that was the first thing. So I kind of shelved that idea, but then I've been working with this agency, and we did these campaign activations for large brands, where one was a bullet time rig. Do you know, like you get an array of like 100 cameras,
right?
And it takes photos over like a 1 second, and like that Matrix style thing.
Got it.
And we did this campaign where, maybe 200 people came through, and they'd get a bullet time video made up, and then there was two of us sitting at a computer uploading it, and there was another guy stitching it.
So this is how they do those matrix shots, where they do a rotation, and is that what it is?
Yeah. It's basically that. And they take the stills and then they stitch it together into a video clip that lasts about, 5 seconds. And then you can kind of reverse it, play it forward, add a music, add an intro and an outro. And they would do this, and then the person would register their email and they'd get sent their video at the end of the day. So it was a very laborious process. And it was just one of the things that made me think, maybe there's a commercial use case for this.
I'm putting it up on the screen. So this is what it is?
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So there was this company that had a rig like this, and they do events and fun kind of corporate promotions. So yeah, that was what led me to think, maybe I'll offer this API to companies, and they can build things like this. So that's pretty much how it happened.
Well, there's a lot of really cool details there. I don't know if you know, I used to be living in Brisbane until fairly recently.
Okay.
And I think also we all have a shared love of the water.
Yeah.
So, Raul, you're a scuba diver, right?
I'm a scuba diver.
Okay.
And,
But then when I moved
Yeah.
to Australia, I used to be in the Central Coast, and I got into spearfishing with a couple buddies of mine. So that was a
Okay,
lot of fun. And then when I moved to Brisbane, we got off to Fraser Island, and that's got to be one of my top 3 favorite places in the world.
Yeah. It's really nice. I'm near the water down that area. So yeah, I can go down the road to the ferry and head out to the islands and stuff. Yeah, really
That's
nice.
Great.
Cool. So, sorry, Raul,
we'd love to know a little bit more about the stack and the engineering behind the product. Like, how did you get started? Like, how, what is the process of building up your existing stack?
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Like I say, this kind of started as a side project and a hobby to learn tech and that kind of thing. I think it was close to 2014 when Lambda first came out, and I just thought, oh, this is amazing. One, I'm a bit of a cheapskate, so if I can use something for free, then that's a massive bonus. And it just made a lot of sense that, yeah, I don't need to worry about servers. I just want to run code. I don't want to manage the servers kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of it was to do, can I build a video editor on top of Lambda? So yeah, ever since then, I've just been a massive fan of serverless technology. I've tried at companies I've worked to get them to adopt it. Yeah, trying to get using Lambda on all sorts of personal projects, and then yeah, it grew out of that ShotStack being integrated using Lambda, trying to get video editing, FFmpeg, C++ libraries working on Lambda, which at that time as well was really hard because you couldn't containerize things. I had to, and I wasn't using just a binary of FFmpeg. I was using a custom C++ application. So I had to get all the linked files and only include those and get those uploading. So it was a huge challenge, very, very enjoyable, but eventually got that working. And then kind of got into well, what database am I going to use? I'll use DynamoDB. Again, it's free if it's not running rather than MySQL. So learn a bit about DynamoDB. Still learning a lot around that and all the kind of the way the single table design works and the indexing. Then used SNS. Now we're using SQS. Later down the road, we got into step functions. So doing some kind of clever stuff now with step functions where we split the render into multiple parts using the parallel processing and then stitch them back together again afterwards.
So I guess to zoom out for a second, so your initial product was the JSON API, or an API where you can give it a path to a video file and a JSON describing transformations that you want to do, like take a certain slice out of it. What else does it do? Or what was the V1 features?
So V1 was very closely tied to the idea of sick edits, where you'd have some footage, it would add a soundtrack, and it would just stitch clips together. So one of the legacy things we still have in there, which you'll see, is the soundtrack, which just plays for the entire duration. Now we have you can add audio clips and edit them. But yeah, originally it was just JSON. It had a title asset, and the title asset originally only had one font, I think.
I think we're still using it. Is it okay? Pause for 1 second. Is it this one? So that's what we generate in transitions. That's what we use the title. That's the title asset that we use.
Okay, if you're using title, it now has 8 or 10 built-in fonts, and it's also possible that you might end up with the default Linux font as well.
Okay.
But yeah, one of the first features people asked for was, we need custom fonts. Yeah, we're probably going to get rid of that title thing because it can't align it properly either. But yeah, I mean, the whole concept of it hasn't changed massively. It's you design your video in JSON, you post it, and a certain amount of time later, you get a URL with the video. Now we host them on a CDN and stuff like that, which we didn't do originally. But yeah, and we're building a whole bunch of new things, but the core product and the concepts have pretty much remained the same over 5 years or so. So
I can tell you, it's been phenomenally useful to us. Like I said, we on a typical week will do a what's new review show where we will pick a selection of, say, 8 or 9 articles from AWS, and then we generate these transitions that you just saw to put the title in there. And that's been really, and the reason we do it that way, well, A, it's for consistency, and B, so recognition segment detection can then pick that up and then chop up our show into segments. So we can take a 1 hour live stream and then break it up, and we have some further automation to do that. But using ShotStack was really neat. So just, yeah, thanks again for building it. It's really enjoying using it. It's been rock solid for us.
Yeah.
It's great to just hear how you're using it. Yeah, it's great.
So Jeff, I have a follow-up question. When it comes to video processing or editing, Lambda isn't the first thing that comes to mind, purely because video editing generally ends up becoming a part of long time long running jobs, and Lambda always had this limitation. I think when it first started it was like 30 seconds, then they extended it to a minute, then 5 minutes, now 15 minutes. But fundamentally, Lambda was designed to run for processes that wouldn't really take more than a few seconds. And then if it actually took multiple seconds or even minutes, you run into the Lambda concurrency issue. How many objects can you actually process all at the same time without running into a backlog and a queue? Was that a concern for you guys as you were trying to look at this stuff? How did you kind of work through that design consideration?
Yeah, really good point. And I think we've gone through all of those steps, and it's been great to see Amazon. Every time something became like this bottleneck or a problem, it's almost like Amazon released what we needed right when we needed it.
So you get ephemeral instance storage.
Well, yeah. I think we've gone through all of these things. I can give you a quick story if you want. But
yeah, absolutely.
Originally, like you say, I don't know what the limits were. I think five minutes maybe, and I can't remember whether it was 1.5 gigabytes of memory.
Yep.
I know they then increased it to 3 gigabytes. One of the funny things about our application and Lambda is that if it doesn't have 2 CPUs, it won't work. Because it's multi-threaded. So, right. But I'm pretty sure it's always had 2 CPUs if you put the memory up as high as possible. But more recently, obviously, they've gone to 10 gigabytes of RAM plus I think that gives you like 4 or 5 CPUs, which, like you say, isn't a massive amount for doing video editing. But once we found out we could split it using step functions, then you've got like where you just multiply it out. You've got 40 gigabytes of RAM plus 16 CPUs or whatever, which is a lot better, and it's all being done at the same time, and then stitching it back together. So that's one way how we got around that. And then we had storage issues. We were using EFS for a while, and that was like we just couldn't really work out exactly how it worked with the like the throughput and the write allowances and stuff like that. So then Amazon came out with a 10 gigabytes ephemeral storage on the Lambda. So we just migrated everything to that recently, and I just noticed that they've now got elastic throughput on EFS announced at reInvent, which might have solved that problem. So, but it's too late. I think
EFS also has the other problem there, that if you have a large number of very small files, the throughput is always going to be a challenge. Like just taking something and unzipping it can take forever, and it just messes up the pattern. So EFS isn't great for use cases like that, but yeah, for if you have shared files sitting over there and you want to share it across a bunch of different readers, EFS ends up becoming a pretty good candidate.
Yeah, in theory it was really good, but in practice it was just too complicated and too many restrictions. So, but
Great.
yeah,
So
I
Lambda's
think
going to work for you then.
it's for us. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, we've
And
managed
so
to work around these.
one of the things that we like to share with the audience is, what are some of your war stories of things that
War stories.
things that you struggled with or learned the hard way about dealing with some of these AWS services? I think you just briefly talked about EFS, but are there other war stories that you'd like to share through all these years of building ShotStack?
Yeah, let me have a think. But yeah, we did have like an outage due to EFS where I think someone put through like thousands of renders all at once, and the disk just couldn't keep up. So then the Lambdas just timed out, or maybe they retry. But yeah, we have a rerun endpoint that only we can access that lets us run those Lambdas that failed. So that's happened. That's probably happened a couple of times. The second time it happened, or it was approaching that point, that was when we migrated away from it. But major war stories, hasn't been anything massive, because I've been working on this for so long, and I've kind of taken my time on a lot of things. A lot of it was just, how the hell do I do this? I'll just keep plugging away at it until I work it out. We're getting to the point now where we have more customers and we have more money coming in, and people need us to be a lot more responsive now. So, fingers crossed, we have enough contingencies in place. But I think the war stories are probably more on the horizon than they are in the past. So,
well, we will check in again.
Yeah.
And then I can understand. So actually, how we ended up meeting is I had an improperly configured SQS that was calling ShotStack, and I ended up running up a bit more of a bill. So that's why I reached up to Dirk,
Right.
and we talked that through. And so I can definitely understand how someone would have created such a mess. So I apologize for accidentally creating a bit of a surge for you.
No, that's okay. We've had that a few times. A GCP script was running, or Google script thing was running, and just left, and they didn't know about it. So yeah, it happens. But we usually are pretty accommodating when that happens and sort it out. So
definitely, you definitely were. Okay, so at some point you found yourself with an API, and then you thought, okay, I need to build. In order to build a product around this, then you need the signups, and you need to be able to then do billing and all that stuff. So is all that also AWS, that side of it? What was developing that side of it like?
Yeah, with so we offload as much as possible. We're actually using Auth0 for our authentication. I have used Cognito in the past, and I just thought Auth0 was a better choice in terms of ease of setup, and you get 7,000 free users or monthly active users. And because we're B2B, if we get 7,000 active users, then that's a very good position to be in. So that was the choice there. Stripe, we use Stripe for payments, but we do run kind of our websites and dashboards as S3 on S3. So they're just React apps, and yeah, they generally call other APIs. We've got a few other APIs for sign up and registration, data, so that people can see in the dashboard how many minutes they've used, and a few other kind of serverless microservices going on in the background to manage everything else.
But I think that's really neat, and it really embodies a cool philosophy that I think we may share. Is like, don't write things yourself if you can. Write the core yourself, but then leverage existing services, be it AWS or otherwise, to then handle the things that are commodities like login or like payment processing, right? Things that you wouldn't want to that could really blow up if you try to write that yourself.
Yeah, I think authentication and payments are just so critical. You want to choose a really respectable provider that has a good reputation, so that they're responsible for that. I don't know if you hear about news in Australia, but there was a week where like 3 massive companies got hacked, and like the biggest phone provider got hacked over here, and there's a lot of hacking stories. So
and the medical records. Medibank, right?
Was it? I'm not sure if it's medical records, but I know that the phone, I think it was Optus. They probably got your like Medicare cards and your driver's license and your passports, all that personal identification stuff. So, and apparently it was just an exposed endpoint or something that let anyone look the stuff up. So, just
crazy.
Yeah, we have a RDS database, and it just has IDs. It has the auth ID for the user and the Stripe ID for their customer. Yeah. So if someone did get into our database, they wouldn't have much to look at. It would just be some IDs. So
ABC 123 is DEF 456, and what do you do with that?
Yeah,
got it. So follow-up question. I think one thing that I'm definitely going to borrow from you, Jeff, is in your art of being scrappy, look for anything that is free. I absolutely love that. That concept. I mean, I've been propagating, using managed services as much as possible, but I think the addition to that, or a tweak to that, would absolutely be use what is free. It's just an absolute no-brainer. So thanks for sharing that, and I'm going to start making that a part of my pitch to anybody I meet. I think that's a really cool way to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'd love to hear a few stories about applications that either your customers have built or the way customers are using ShotStack, unlike the way you had originally dreamt about, or you had envisaged how people would end up using your product. Are there interesting stories like that there?
Yeah, I think it hasn't. The main use case is not what I expected it to be. So the main use case was, having worked in those kind of agencies doing these brand campaigns, I thought, agencies will love this. But it turns out that right from the very beginning, it was much more developer, technical kind of companies coming to us who wanted to build apps, kind of really. So our first customer was a car visualization company in India, and they model up the car so that you can choose what color you want it in, and it's all 3D, and you can rotate it and interact with it, kind of WebGL stuff. But they wanted to use us to build videos where the customer would go to the showroom, they would look at the car that they were interested in, they'd test drive it, and then later on they'd get a video with that car that they test drove in the color that they drove, with all the kind of optional extras that they could get, and it was personalized. So they built that application. That was really the kind of first big use case that we were used for. And then it was very interesting. And it's just been a lot more developer focused. Our biggest customers are companies that have built an application around us, and we're now kind of embedded in their system, just like Stripe is, or Auth0 is for us. We're kind of built into their system, which is a great kind of position to be in. And they're using us for high volume use cases on a continuous basis. So they're either their customers are using them directly, or they're automatically generating these videos from some kind of data source. So I always thought it would be like some agency campaign thing, but it's actually much more application level. So it seems kind of obvious now, but at the time it was not really what I was expecting. So that was quite different. Yeah.
Sounds pretty neat. So carrying on from there, we just finished with reInvent, and tons of very, very interesting and exciting announcements out there. How's reInvent been for you in terms of announcements, or what Yeah, what effect has the reInvent announcements had on your business, or how are you looking to leverage those?
Yeah. So I didn't follow it too closely. I've seen all the kind of I'm on the serverless status news list, and I checked out some of the AWS page of all the kind of updates. And yeah, I think there's some interesting one. I've read some of the feedback. A lot of people saying it wasn't the most exciting reInvent, but I think AWS, yeah, it just seems to be constantly evolving. You know, with the serverless side of things, it was halfway through the year that they introduced that ephemeral storage. So they seem to be doing stuff all the time anyway. There was a few things that stood out for me at reInvent, which I'm interested in because they're on the serverless side of things. Well, apart from the EFS kind of elastic throughput, which I thought was interesting, but too late. There was the snap start for Lambda. So I think I haven't used Java and Lambda, but from what I know, it's really slow. So that would be a great update for any kind of Java applications. I think probably goes a long way to help the reputation of Lambda as well, because those people that are kind of opposed to using Lambda or serverless will cite the kind of cold start times. And yeah, if you're coming from a Java background, then that's probably very true. But I think this takes it down to about 2 seconds or something, which we're kind of used to that anyway. We use Node.js.
Right.
But yeah, for some of our endpoints, if they roll this out to the other runtimes, then yeah, if we can shave our response times down to say 200 milliseconds or something like that. I think we're roughly about 1 second, 800 milliseconds now. That'll be great. So yeah, hopefully that'll be on the horizon. We'll see where that goes. I think the biggest thing was the application composer, which again I've only looked briefly at. I was reading something about it today about how it does your cloud formation, it does your SAM, your service application modeling, and also some kind of local integration. I'm not too sure how it all comes together, but
so what it does is it actually creates local SAM templates for you with skeletal code that you can fill out. Though I've been very confused as I've been playing around with it. So I still haven't figured out, because the concepts of events and permissions are all kind of intermingled.
Right.
So on one hand, you have permissions to say, yep, you can consume and read and access these events coming from this other system. But at the same time, if you want to read, write, and do other operations on it, then it's kind of all fuzzy as to how those dependencies translate into permission schemes. So I think, like everything else, you said it'll all evolve, but definitely exciting to see some of that stuff come up.
But I'm just looking at my my LinkedIn, and I've seen several posts over the last day that, like, trying out Code Catalyst. I made it to here. I'm stuck here. What do I do? And so I think it is the post reInvent experimenting time. I think will be for the next couple of weeks, right? I'm looking forward to trying out Code Catalyst and App Composer, seeing where those fit in, and understanding the boundaries of those tools. Permissions in serverless is always a bit fiddly, so to have that in some kind of drag and drop interface is going to be a big achievement if they can get it working. I think so. We use the serverless framework to manage all our AWS. Maybe something like this would be enough to force us over to using SAM, and because we're already writing some cloud formation. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see. As a developer, you'd like to get in the files and write the code, but maybe this would work. I'll send you some SAM templates that we're using. We're getting ready to. I've been doing some blog posts about them, about how I use ShotStack. SAM is great. I think that makes it really easy. And combine that with function URLs. That's I use that a lot in automation.
Yeah,
that's really handy.
Yeah, and I think is it right that they have better kind of local development integration with SAM as well? You can kind of run stuff locally in some way.
Yes, that's called SAM
Right.
Accelerate.
Right.
I think
Okay.
you were to look at for that.
Yeah, that's been there for a bit. I think they've had that for 6 to 8 months now, SAM Accelerate,
Okay.
which allows you to
Yeah.
run a lot of your serverless components like Lambda and EventBridge and all of those things locally and
Yeah.
test them locally before you actually, oh, wow, 2021.
Time flies. I was just looking at that. Like, whoa, time flies.
So well over a year now. But yeah, it's it allows you to test and run a lot of that stuff locally, which is actually pretty neat.
I mean, they have SAM
that'd
local invoke, but it's going to build a Docker container, and it's a little heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what's on your wish list, Jeff, for AWS? Like, if you could ask for anything from AWS, what would those things be?
So my biggest thing, and something we're going to have to look at soon, is something I just can't understand why it works this way, is on API Gateway, you have an API key limit of 10,000 keys. So we're going to hit that soon, and we need to create our own authentication kind of mechanism, which I can't quite understand why they've done it that way, because if you look at a company like, say, Cloudinary or Stripe or these companies, they have millions of developers and they need millions of keys. So what was the use case that AWS came up with that was going to limit this to only 10,000 keys? The only thing I can think of is that they weren't thinking of it as like a system for developer tools, but more for like an internal company APIs where, realistically you might have like 50 or 100 keys. So 10,000 was like this massive limit. But yeah, if there was anything I could wish for, it would be that they would just remove that limit and you could have like 10 million keys. And then
because I'm curious if it is a soft limit or is it really a hard limit?
No, it's a hard limit because I've asked them about it and it just won't go up. Yeah, because everything else about API Gateway is great. It does the throttling, it does those keys and quotas. Yeah, it just works great, but we're going to hit that limit and we won't be able to use it anymore. So I'm going to have to find an alternative.
That is an interesting one. I had not realized that those keys were limited.
Yeah.
On API Gateway. Neat.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us, Jeff, your story with ShotStack. We absolutely love the product. We are big fans, and thank you for creating it and sharing your experiences with us.
Thanks. No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on the show. And like I say, when you meet someone that's actually using your product and you've never met them before, but then they tell you, "Oh, we use your product." I guess it's the best feeling about developing, being a founder and a developer. So yeah,
I couldn't agree more. It's really fabulous.
I've got a converse to Raul's question. So what's next for ShotStack that you can talk about?
So we're working on a lot of things. I don't know if you've logged into the dashboard recently, but we're working on that drag and drop interface of our own, which we want to work like a typical kind of video editor like Premiere or DaVinci Resolve, maybe simplified quite a lot, but lets you drag and drop your designs, which has always been a big problem for customers. We're also working on something where customers can upload their source footage and then immediately run basic transformations on it. So you might
the dashboard for the audience here. So this is the ShotStack dashboard.
If you click on Studio,
okay,
then you can open up. I don't know if you've got templates in there.
Let's see. If you create template.
Open one of these existing ones, and it should.
Let's do a car dealer.
Okay, hopefully it'll work. Okay.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, so this is showing the different. I can see exactly how this is mapping to the ShotStack data structure. Okay. So cool. You got JSON view there. Okay. So I'll zoom in for the audience here. So this is what you'd create if you were using the ShotStack API. And so this is a JSON view of an existing composition that you can then render.
Yeah. We still got some buggy issues with like playback in the preview there, and that font hasn't quite loaded correctly. I think if you click on it, or it'll probably change.
Oh, I avoid front end work for this reason. That this is hard stuff.
Now the font's correct. Yeah, it's very fiddly, very fiddly, especially video in the browser. It's just frame accuracy, things like that's very hard.
So what someone could use, or if they worked at a car dealership, right? They could write down all the specs, take a bunch of pictures. Someone there would write some automation that would then push this to ShotStack, and then they could use, I guess in Australia, it'd be carsales.com.au would then could feature this video and hopefully help them sell this Mercedes.
Yeah, you can you can save this as a template, and then you can actually add placeholders. So where it's got the kilometers, that becomes a placeholder, and then integrate that with your application, and hook it into your database or whatever, and call the template endpoint, and it will just merge that data and render the video for you. So that's been a big. Well, we've been working on this most of the year. And it's getting there. It's still a bit rough around the edges, but it's getting better and better. So
well, I like the idea that someone could maintain consistency of their brand and consistency of the videos but still be able to visualize it in real time and being able to edit it and then have it. I guess the hard part that I'm thinking is you still want to limit the features, right? And deciding that sweet spot where you're not attempting to recreate, I don't know, like Premiere or something, obviously. But you're still having that feature set where it's usable, and just being able to maintain that balance, I can see as being a really tricky thing to do.
Yeah, we something like Premiere would be very ambitious. A lot of people ask us about Adobe After Effects, which is even more, that's not really a video editing tool; it's more a motion graphics. So, but that's the expectation some people have. So it's we have to kind of temper those expectations, and but I think you can still design something really nice with this interface. We'll get designers in who can actually design really good looking templates, and then that should maybe people won't want After Effects so much then if they can I can still do something nice.
Well, I think I will send this to my designer, and because right now what we're doing is she comes up with a video file that has a blank spot, and I'm injecting text into that blank spot, but it's limited in terms of I can't get this nice white text on the image background. So I'll give this a shot.
Yep. Have a play around, give us your feedback, and let us know any troubles you have. So yeah, that'd be great.
One idea I have that I think would be really helpful is to be able to give it a video that would, be compliant with, say, LinkedIn native video, because sometimes LinkedIn native kicks it back to you and says, okay, this is too big or it's too long. And so if those requirements were kind of hard coded in, say, okay, you can give a video and you say, okay, I know this is going to work with LinkedIn native video.
Right.
That would be super cool. Or Twitter, Twitter has a 90-second limit, right? So if you give it a thing that's longer than that, it should just kick it back and say, this isn't going to work for what you're trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I really like that idea. Right now we have aspect ratios, so you can make it square, vertical, whatever for the different platforms. But there is a whole bunch of rules around all those different platforms, isn't there? So
or YouTube Shorts, right? YouTube Shorts, which I'm trying to get into, have to be under a minute. To being able to, and have to be, well, ideally they have to be the portrait aspect ratio. So just being able to enforce that at an API level would be pretty cool.
Yeah. I like that idea.
I'm saying it very selfishly. I think, it's a really good idea. Go for it.
I think a lot of other customers would have the same kind of same needs. So I like it.
Awesome. Well, let's see. I think that's all I've got. I really enjoyed talking with you and meeting with you and just learning the ShotStack story and putting a face and a voice to this tool that we use and like. So thank you again for your time, and we look forward to checking in again in the future.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. It's been really fun.
Yeah, and thank you so much for coming in and sharing, your story and your experiences, and this conversation about AWS. We're very passionate about talking to folks who have built entire solutions from scratch on AWS, have adopted serverless. And so thank you so much for being such a great example for the audience and coming and sharing your story with us.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Great. A pleasure having you, Jeff.
Thanks.
We hope
Thank
to
you.
have you back on the show in a few months with new updates and new stories to share.
Sure. I'll be glad to come back. That'd be great.
All
Perfect.
right. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.
Is your AWS public cloud bill growing? While most solutions focus on visibility, CloudFix saves you 10 to 20% on your AWS bill by finding and implementing AWS recommended fixes that are 100% safe. There's zero downtime and zero degradation in performance. We've helped organizations save millions of dollars across tens of thousands of AWS instances. Interested in seeing how much money you can save? Visit cloudfix.com to schedule a free assessment and see your yearly savings.